New Paradigm Conversations. I'm Sierra Morningstar Blue, and I'm really excited today. I have a very special guest, Kiannaa Sage. She's a spiritual teacher, and she works with energy psychology, which is really interesting. I've personally had a session with her, so I've had a very profound experience in our time together, and I knew in that moment I really wanted to have her on this platform to have a conversation and talk about. She works a lot with patterns, themes, programs, and different energies, and I really wanted to unfold this. Especially, I feel the timing of this conversation feels so synchronistic with what's going on in the grids, what's going on in the collective. And I just want to introduce her. Kiannaa is a consultant, a strategist, and master of results who has been asking the big questions since childhood. And I love that, that last piece. I think a lot of us can relate. Her approach is to link deep knowing of purpose with personal alignment to guide the world's trailblazers in their pursuit of excellence. Kiannaa's core beliefs are rooted in the resonant power of compassion, the inspired growth of enthusiasm, and tying them into the personal experiences of trailblazers to develop big picture results. She helps them and their teams develop synchronicity in their business, teams, and life. So thank you for joining us, Kiannaa.
I'm really excited.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, just a brief synopsis of what you do.
Well, in short, everybody's got problems, right? Everybody has conflict of some sort. And I used to tag myself as a conflict management expert, although I got a lot more conflict when I did that. So I changed my title. But essentially, I help people solve big problems. And typically within corporate organizations, there's always silos or people building their little, what do they call them? I don't even know what they're called now because I don't engage in that, but they build their little department up, and so everybody else suffers. And really what happens is the entire organization suffers. And I see patterns. I've always seen patterns since I was a little girl. I have dyslexia, and dyslexics see things differently than the world than most people see them. And I've always seen patterns. And when I started working with teams, I could easily see patterns like that. And so I started working on developing my own development for teams. And then I noticed that the leaders had a difficult time managing the complexity of the team. So I integrated a process that I developed, and we get phenomenal results. And why wouldn't you? If you're seeing patterns that other people can't see, that means you can avoid a lot of pitfalls. And, you know, from an organization perspective, that equals efficiencies and money. Now I want to make my work much more accessible to average people, if you will. So I'm not just working with senior executives. I'm able to work with their managers, and people can afford to come see me on their own. And I've been doing a lot more one-on-one work than teamwork since COVID started. And as everybody knows, COVID has changed our entire landscape in which we are doing business. And more than ever, I think people need to feel supported. And so the one-on-one work has been really, which is why I had the opportunity to even work with you, because normally I would be consumed with teams, and that would be the bulk of my work. But since COVID, I've been able to switch and really work one-on-one with people. And I think having a profound impact on how they navigate these times has been extremely fulfilling and rewarding for me, and also to hear the results that my clients are having. You know, it fills my heart. I love it.
Yeah, it's really interesting that what's coming to me is you're saying, describing how you've worked with teams and organizations or companies, and the patterns that you can see and pick up on, the discordant patterns, right, to reorganize and bring back some harmony into the flow of what they're co-creating. In my experience with you, because I also know that you were able to pick up on individual patterns as well. So, and we too are an organization in some way. You
Absolutely.
know, we have a team, we have a full system of energy and light and variations of that flowing through us. So it's very important to continue to, in my journey, to not judge the discordant patterns that we notice and arise, but rather get curious about it so we can simply reorganize them so we can have more energy and more clarity. What are some patterns lately that you've been noticing with your clients? Have you been seeing certain themes, especially since you've been saying you've been switching to one-on-one sessions with COVID? So I imagine there's a purpose, there's a higher purpose for you to be doing that. What's been coming up for you with that?
Well, there's two things I'd like to mention in relationship to seeing patterns, because I see things as systems, and you said, well, we have those patterns running individually. So my background is in systems thinking and seeing the patterns as a system. And I just like to offer that families run patterns and systems too. And so, like for example, I worked with an autistic child who the parent came to me because he was having suicidal thoughts and he was acting out violently. This is right before the lockdown started, and I was working with the child and we were able to address the acting out, but the family system is what really needed to be addressed. And especially when those systems in the family are fragmented, whether it's a divorce and remarriage, then you have more of the patterns that influence these little sensitive, amazing children who have sensitivities that the parents don't know how to manage. So I think to see things from a systems perspective not only helps the individual, but helps the entire family and or organization. So I wanted to bring that to attention, because I think a lot of times when people hear team development and corporate and organizations, we forget that the first group that we're a part of is our family, and those patterns and imprints, they run through us as individuals and also as we go into other groups. So that's important to be aware of. As far as what patterns recently that came up for my clients, and this one's a hard one to bring up because a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but it's really the tug of war. That tug of war, and that is more than just an internal conflict. It's really life and death. Like COVID is a life and death type of a thing, but let's be real. Before COVID became so public, people were having these tug of wars before, and they just were avoiding them or not willing to look at them, or, oh, I got to go to work, so I can't pay attention to my health and well-being. But these tug of wars really need to be addressed because they are life and death. I know mine was life and death, and I wasn't sick, but I knew if I continued on that path, that was exactly what I was going to get, was very, very ill. And on the outside, I look just like I look now. I think maybe I look better now. I don't know. But so the tug of wars, when I was doing my energy recalibration, which is my monthly membership program, and that's when I looked at the energy of the entire group, the tug of war was coming up with more than 90% of the members. And I think oftentimes we just don't want to take the time to acknowledge the path that we're on. And if we continue down this path, what is that going to bring us to? And if we don't make choices, and I think a tug of war is really a series of choices that need to be made to change the trajectory that you're heading on, then you end up suffering greatly. And we have a lot of people that are suffering right now in the tug of war because, one, they're not aware that they're in a tug of war, and two, they haven't really made the choice and commitment to themselves to go within and resolve the discord that's occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. So much is coming through while you're talking. So I'm just trying to navigate it and to be clear with one theme at a time that wants to come through. This tug of war, I couldn't agree more with this inner conflict and the discordance that is created internally, right? It's that resistance, and whether that can start showing up as illness or fatigue or a variety of things. And we see this reflected, I believe we live in a holographic universe, and we're seeing these reflections everywhere, this war energy, this conflict energy. This is kind of what I believe ultimately everything is an invitation, to more expansion and an upgrade. But
sure,
oftentimes in the human experience, the catalyst to that sometimes is getting into a space, whether we are suffering or in a lot of discomfort, right? As a result of that inner conflict, as a result to forgetting how to live in harmony with our systems and the environment and the planet. And what I see is just living in universal flow, living in the flow with our pranic, our life force energy, right? Not going against life, going with life. And I was just, a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, were recently talking about, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this. I too in my journey had to get very uncomfortable, and I experienced a lot of suffering as a catalyst to my awakening and to coming back into more harmonics. And the question is the collective still too comfortable? We may look out and it seems like, how could that be? But how uncomfortable does it need to get before we choose, right? Before it becomes so blaringly obvious that it's time to choose to do something different. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I do believe that there is this field of distortion, and that was something I addressed within my energy recalibration this last month, to neutralize that, for my clients to not be as engaged and triggered with that field, because it's real. And when you're talking about, are people too comfortable, I think that people have not woken up, if you will, they're becoming numb to their own pain, their own fears, because they think anxiety, first of all, anxiety has been popularized, and you see on people talking about anxiety and it's become so normal for people to be anxious that they don't realize that their system is telling them, hey, we're not aligned. You're not supposed to. No offense to those of you who are medicating for anxiety, because I know it could be traumatic. However, our bodies were attuned to give us information, and anxiety is a messenger. And it's a messenger for you to make some adjustments, to get in tune, to go inward, to process your emotions, which I understand. Trust me, that I have some emotions that I'd rather not look at sometimes too, like, oh, I feel disenfranchised, or I was forgotten, or somebody ignored me, or I wasn't included, and whatever it is. And I go into my woe is me moments too. But we were never supposed to medicate those away. We were supposed to look at that, acknowledge that, integrate that into who we are so it can transmute. But I think that the society, our world in general, for the most part has become numb to their own discomfort. And that, a part of the media campaigns is to do just that, throw so much at you that you become disassociated with your own inner wisdom. Now, I do not think that is everybody. I don't think that's happening to everybody. But I also don't think, I think that's why these podcasts that you're doing are so important, because one, they're authentic, they're real, they're not sales pitches, they're about getting real information and assistance out to people, which I appreciate about who you are, and the vulnerability, because look, we need to find support for what it is that we're experiencing, because we're not alone. And there is avenues out. Yes, sometimes you have to pay for assistance and support, but it's there for you to evolve and grow out of your pain, not to sit and sulk in it. I don't know.
Yeah. It's
Sorry, I could be direct.
No, it's that you're bringing up so much. I'm just trying to, again, because I can tend to go on like tangents. There's just so much, because the reason is because we're kind of lifting up a lot of patterns, and with what's going on in the collective, so much is rising up. This density, or I like to say, I too see patterns. So I see discordant patterns, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you're bringing in a really powerful piece that I feel isn't talked about enough. And so thank you for doing that, because, you know, and I'll disclose this. I don't mind sharing this. You know, I've been through a journey of, a very dysfunctional childhood, and a lot of depression, and a lot, being in the part of, the mental health system in a ways, trying to figure out what's going on. And I had illness. I had, the gamut of things that were showing me what was out of alignment and what I needed to transmute, ancestrally, and also, what I came here to interact with. But I know a lot of us don't even have that awareness. But what I did realize in my journey, and the most powerful thing that I started to, that shifted everything in my life, was the moment I had to take responsibility for what I was creating, the loops that were continuing to run through me, whether it came from childhood or what it matters in some way. But that, in that moment, it's about how can we, with loving compassion, take responsibility for what we're feeling, and how can, because it's not this overbearing, critical voice type of a way. What I mean is, when we take responsibility, we step into empowered freedom, because now we are realizing that we can choose something different.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that choice comes via being able, and this is what I love what you were talking about, to be present with these uncomfortable emotions, thoughts, and feelings, and to know that they actually won't kill us or hurt us if we can be the conduit for the change to happen. And it actually can happen quite rapidly and easily. I'm not sure if I want to use easily, but easier than I think we believe. And it's a matter of not being in resistance. And you had brought up, we were going to maybe touch on this September being Suicide Awareness Month. And now I'm just feeling, we were like, I don't know what we're talking about this, but I am feeling guided to go into that, because as the energies continue to amplify in the planet, so will the density to meet that, to transmute. And with all these other agendas playing out, it can be very, very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So what insights, what support, how can we now shift this conversation to offering some insights and tools into how to navigate these dense states of being that people might be experiencing?
So there's several things I'm just thinking. First of all, I felt myself welling up when you started talking about suicide awareness, because I'm an empath and I feel things, and it's so prevalent. And I think that's really going back to the tug of war. I think the people that kind of give up are the ones that are in the tug of war and they're contemplating suicide. And I have worked with elite executives who have been suicidal. I mean, this has been, I do believe that's part of my calling, is to work with people who are in that realm of should I stay or go? And they're not able to voice it to anybody else. And somehow they voice it to me and I can get them to the other side. But people feel hopeless because they don't have the tools. And, you know, I didn't grow up feeling my emotions. I felt everybody else's. And I would be like, whoa, like the holidays at our house was a catastrophe for me because I could feel everything that nobody was saying, and they were saying a heck of a lot. But they were saying it was sugar, and some of them with not sugar. And so going back to the whole suicide awareness month, I think the main thing that I want to say is, what I have found with my clients who are suicidal, they more often than not have entity attachments. And the entities are really creating this visceral tug of war. And you might not even know you have them. I mean, I have worked with very spiritual people who did not know that they had entity attachments, because who the hell wants to talk about this? It's not pretty, it's not fun, and if you're talking to somebody that doesn't know how to address it, you're falling on deaf ears and you seem like a crazy person. But that, I believe that was what was happening. I think it's happening with many, many children who are having these very depressive, suicidal thoughts. They're vulnerable, and the entities and earthbound human spirits are attaching and magnifying their emotions. So they think they're sad and depressed, but it's really a tug of war that's going on. And you bring up this concept of 100% responsibility. And that is so pivotal, because we always have choice and we always have free will. And if we dive into that 100%, we become more empowered. And you can bring in more light, you can bring in more love, and that will disassemble the hold within the tug of war. But that type of dark, dense energy really creates a divide. I do believe, and I'm going to go out here on a limb, I do believe the mass shootings that we were seeing in the schools prior to them being in lockdown, otherwise we would have seen more of them in 2020. These teachers are not equipped to deal with these kids that have these emotional disturbances, and they can't see these energies. They can't see them. Psychology, traditional psychology, these people are not skilled to work with something they cannot see. And it's unfortunate. It's good for us as energy healers if we can see them, but a lot of energy healers don't even want to touch working with people like that because they're so far down in the depths of despair and it's hard to come up. But it's much easier when you take off those attachments. As soon as I took off that autistic kid's attachment, no more suicidal thoughts. All the murderous language that he was speaking went away. Now, he still had some behavioral issues, which is normal for kids who have imbalances in their diet, that's another bag of worms. But I do think the density is creating vulnerabilities that is bringing in more attachments. So for example, the other day I went just to get takeout, and I'm very sensitive. I was waiting for the takeout for 10 minutes and had to leave because I was getting nauseous in an empty restaurant because the servers aren't happy to be wearing the masks, their face shields, there's new protocols to make sure that they stay safe and don't die. They're all doing these things with the fear behind I might die. And that's what people are not talking about.
Yeah, it's an interesting, a lot of us, definitely a lot of people in my community, you know, identify as sensitive and empathic, or a light worker, or a starseed, or what have you. I want to say this before I pivot. I find that those that do tend to suffer with things like depression, or these lower vibrational states that can, you know, they're working through some dense energy, these attachments, these lower frequencies. And I want to also kind of put out there to this empowered piece of, it's because you often hold, you know, some of the biggest light on the planet. And I believe that's part of the contracts that we sign up for, you know, like in a really expanded perspective. And it can yet at the same time feel very overwhelming, very confusing, and very much like, what are you doing? You know, what am I doing wrong? Or how am I failing? How am I failing at life? How am I failing at being human? You know, this is a very common thing that goes on in these in empathic, sensitive, light working communities. Because we're so sensitive, and because we can easily empathize with those energies and open up to these frequencies. I often almost seeing it in sometimes an innocent way, but how, Kiannaa, can you give some insight or some knowledge or wisdom around how people can, if they are experiencing, let's say, a lot of heaviness or sadness in their fields right now, what are some like empowered tools and pieces that we can bring through for these for listeners to not get into fear about the entities? So like maybe even talk about what exactly that is, so that they can have a better understanding and to know that it's not it's easily remedied, I guess I could say, in a way. Or what's your, I'd like to hear your what you would like to say about that.
Well, I would like to give some practical steps that people can do, because I think you're onto something about them being a big light and something to offer here. And I think that we all have something to offer the world, whether we're aware of what that offering is or not. So the first thing is to ask yourself, how can I bring my light to my day today? So open-ended questions. High quality, open-ended questions can turn your life around, literally. So if you're not sure of what a high quality, open-ended question, send me your problem and I'll send you some options because I'm really skilled at that. But ask yourself open-ended questions. That's a great way. How can I bring my light into my day today? How best can I bring my light into the day today? How am I going to showcase how my skill set, whatever that skill set is for you that day? The power of prayer cannot be understated. For me, during my darkest days, I've always connected with Holy Spirit. I bring the Holy Spirit into everything I drink, everything that I eat has Holy Spirit intentions within them. I'm not one of those people that prays over my food and makes a big deal out of it, but it's something that is innate in my eating of anything that I ingest. And talk about helping alleviate some of the density. We're getting a lot of density from the food that we're eating. If you're getting takeout from the people that have the masks and that don't want to be doing that, but are happy to have a paycheck, you know, there's all kinds of thoughts that they're thinking while they're preparing your food. And having an intention or a prayer in which you speak into your food is a great practice. Grounding. I'm sure you teach your clients how to ground and connect with the earth. I think it can be quite frightening now because, as you know, Gaia is speaking right through us and it's coming through really strong. So for people who aren't used to experiencing energy, now you might be experiencing it more viscerally than maybe even a year ago. But that's a great practice to have. And I think also working on a regular basis with somebody like me or you to help you process through things. And I want to speak to something that you brought up about traumas, because the old paradigm of dealing with traumas is that you have to go through the story and figure out the whys and process how you're feeling. I can unravel a trauma without the story because I'm seeing it energetically. The problem is it can happen in a 30-minute session. Whether it's an addiction, things that we think are insurmountable can be transmuted in minutes if you're working with somebody who's gifted in what they do and they're doing it in love and light. You still have the responsibility to consciously make choices that are different than the story you've been telling yourself for 20, 30 years. And I think that is the biggest paradigm shift from trauma, from healing from trauma, is to not get stuck in the pattern of the story, which is really habitual, which could also be cleared, but not at the same time as you're clearing the trauma, because it needs to unravel and shift. Like if you're shifting a pattern of trauma, let's just say an addiction of any kind, it could be sex addiction, it could be pot, it could be coffee, it could be alcohol, whatever the addiction is. From my perspective, that is only a blocking of love. And so how easy is it to transmute something that is not of love to love? Easy. However, how long it takes for that pattern to reorganize within your energy field depends on how deep the story is, one, and how long this is going back generationally. So whether it was your parents, your grandparents, and great-parents, I mean, because we know these things happen generationally. And from my perspective, that transmuting time can be anywhere from 5 days to 40. It just depends on that particular person, but it can be done without a bunch of therapy and without doing the stories over and over and over again and getting right to the crux, and then the time's up, you gotta go, pay your money, and then you have to come back next week and do it again. That's not how it works anymore for those who are willing to try something different.
Absolutely. And not only that, the energies that are flooding the planet right now are supporting this rapid acceleration of transformation.
Absolutely.
And it's so key to, I feel, to say that too, because you know, part of the belief is that the healing journey is hard and long. Yes. And, you know, and it's like, it's not really work at all. It's about a willingness, again, to be present and to, I actually find the fastest results is just when I'm not in judgment to whatever's arising, no matter how dense and humbling these things that I've experienced. It's not, that's the story, you know, when we don't attach to that and we just allow the energy to move and get out. That's what it's wanting to do. It's like the energies that are flooding the planet, and especially anyone that's even, you know, listening to this, you know, you're probably awake. You're already, you know, connecting to more of your crystalline DNA or you know, these higher awarenesses in your field. The more we get out of the way, it can happen quite fast, rapid, and naturally. And it's the addiction to the story is what I feel is being perpetuated in the collective at this moment through social media, through the news, through every event that is happening. It's always putting us back into this fight or flight and activating our nervous systems and just reactivating traumas, whether it's our trauma from this lifetime, another, or ancestral, what doesn't matter, right? Again, because the story doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's
really energy. Say that again. The story doesn't really. That is so huge.
Yeah, it's energy. It's energy that's looking to change in the most simple terms, in my perspective. And we can get addicted, and I admittingly have gone through that myself, even recently, the addiction to what I'm finding, the hero's journey and the hero's journey within, you know, like the victim and then the perpetrator, and then I'm going to save myself and rise up, you know, but it's this cycle. We don't have to be in that anymore. We can actually just start attuning and knowing ourselves as the ascended masters that we actually are, and just allow the energy to shift as a result. And I really feel it's actually that simple. Not always does it feel that easy, but what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I would agree with you that it is that simple. And I would say that it is that easy. It's just our beliefs about the process that need to be challenged and changed. And I offer this to my clients all the time. Like, challenge your old beliefs. If they are not supporting who you are becoming, get in the habit of challenging them. And I think that we get so comfortable in knowing who we've been that we forget that is that person, who are you becoming? And if those beliefs that that person had, yourself, are not supporting who you're becoming, then you need to begin to challenge them. You need to become aware of how those beliefs are perpetrating the way that you are changing.
100%. And I really am going to invite everyone listening to this to really take a moment to maybe take inventory on what they're feeling and what their thoughts are and what they're experiencing during the day. Because irregardless, again, from my perspective, of the collective chaos and what disasters, whether some are man-made or not man-made, you know, at the end of the day, we have the power to override these old matrix systems. And part of how we do that is through taking responsibility of what thought forms we are creating. There's a difference between reacting and just allowing emotion to move through us as energy. And I feel that that's what our responsibility is as way showers, as light leaders, as teachers, you know, to be the example of what's possible and be the embodiment of the new paradigm. And through that, you know, taking that responsibility to what we're creating and what we're co-creating and how we're, you know, adding to the discordant energies that are showing up in our collective right now. I know that for me these days, it's been really about getting back to basics with so much going on. It's like, what are my mantras? You know, how many times a day am I checking in with myself? Getting really organized, committing to what I came here to do, like a new level of commitment, because we're all, I feel, kind of upgrading as it's going to be needed in these coming years, you know, and that's just all I'll say about that. But, you know, things are still going to be continuing to get uncomfortable. And it's important for me as someone who identifies as a light worker or a way shower to continue nourishing my nervous system, to continue grounding and taking care of my auric field so that I can be like that, you know, that oak tree, or just like that column of light, and I can be in that fifth dimensional or higher dimensional states while I'm still in physical form or navigating this earthly realm. And it's like the eye of the storm kind of analogy, you know, and I feel that's ultimately what we're here to be and do, and then share our gifts and our journeys, however they show up, you know, uniquely for us. How are you navigating the current energies, and how I know you shared some tools about what I like to see as kind of spiritual hygiene or energy hygiene, you know. What are some final insights, thoughts, and tools that can help anyone listening right now to remember who they are, to be in their power, and to, again, take responsibility for what they're creating?
Well, as you were talking, I had a funny story that came to my mind, which was why I giggled. So I'm just going to give an example of how I practice. on a regular basis. So the energies are dense. So I'll just say, I work out of my house, as does my husband. So I don't leave. This is not unusual for me anyways. I don't usually leave the house to go anywhere very often. So when I do, so I had an appointment yesterday down in San Diego. So I live in Orange County. So I was driving down to San Diego, which is a good 1.5-hour drive to where I was going downtown. Stopped and picked up my favorite sushi food because I'm very particular. Got my food, went to my appointments, waiting at the door for my massage to help with my shoulder because my little puppy pulled the leash, and I have had an injury for 3 months now. Anyways, long story short, she was a no-show. So normally that would really piss me off. And although I was bothered, I was more shocked at how it was in my face that I am to be my own healer. Obviously, I have gotten really attuned to working with other people's pain, and physical pain is something I have worked very hard to hone in my skill. But when it came to me addressing my own physical pain, I was looking outside. And my guidance was, no, you have to fix this, Kiannaa. So I am on my car ride home after 1.5 hours just driving there. Now I'm turning around, I'm going back, and I'm doing my own healing on myself. What is it? And so how do I do that? I look at my arm and I say, okay, it's about my arm. And it's in my shoulder. So I look at what does that symbolically represent for me. And then I ask myself, what am I feeling? Oh, I was feeling strain, and I was feeling like a deep bruise. And so then I ask myself high quality questions all the time. Where are you feeling strained or uncomfortable in your life, Kiannaa? And then I look for a number to come up, and whether it's using a pendulum or feeling in my hands, or a number will emerge in my periphery, and there's my number. Okay, what are the 5 things, Kiannaa, where you're feeling most uncomfortable in your life? And I will go through and find, like an investigator. My arm is totally healed now. I don't need a massage. I wanted a massage. I wanted somebody else to do the work for me. And my guidance was, hell no, you're a master. You know how to do this, Kiannaa. You need to go within, you need to find your lessons, and you need to clear those and upgrade. And that is how you upgrade on a regular basis. So that's my story of how I do it on a regular basis. But I will also add, I check in. If there is something funky or odd, I listen. Like for a while back, this is when I really started to see more clearly and multidimensionally. I was seeing things that I was not familiar with because they're sending things to the planet that are not normal. And when I really started to see that, at first I was curious, then I started questioning and doubting myself, but I sat with it and I challenged it, and I rose to a place where I could address it with love and light so it can be transmuted so it doesn't impact my field. I'm not going out because I don't want to be out. I'm not going out because people are not in touch with themselves. And that's a dangerous place to be, is in a crowd of people who are totally disconnected and not addressing their emotional bodies. So I think it's really important to do a scan of your energy field, check and see if there's any discordant, and listen to yourself and the guidance that you're being given, whether you're getting it from your higher self, whether you think you're getting it from your intuition or your guides. I don't even care where you think you're hearing it from. If you're getting guidance, it's your responsibility to listen. So I'll go throw it back to you. I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but so. Yeah,
no, that's perfect. I love that you're bringing in this piece of, again, because I love the empowerment, and I really, because I feel that's all what we need to start attuning to, especially at a time when we feel so many restrictions and things being taken away, and or so much uncertainties, and as we're navigating again more of these patterns and densities to move through us that are no longer in alignment to where we're at, it's these questions, being the investigator, being curious, is some of it's, in my perspective, when we become the investigator and we become curious, we're aligning to that higher self technology, which is more of a witness, which is who we truly are. It's not, that's why there's no judgment to what's arising or what's occurring. It's the healer, it's the ascended healer that's coming in to wonder about it, to gather information and to see, again, if we can get out of the story and look at the energy, or, you know, or what's being asked of us, or what does our body need more of, or what part of our life is, you know, feeling restricted or constrained, or, you know, whatever that is. We are a living organism, and everything we interact with is a part of our hologram, is a part of what we're creating. And so, yeah, get curious. It's all connected. One chakra's off, they're all going to be off. One part of your life is off, the rest, it's all it's all this dynamic, cohesive organism of different harmonics, and we're trying to shift what's been out of alignment and discordant back into universal harmonics, right? To the flow, into the ease, because in our natural state is already healed. And we have that aspect that is already in a timeline, because there's no future or past that is existing. So it's like we're calling that in every moment. And as we get curious about what's uncomfortable or what pain we have or whatever's going on, that's how we can meet that and bring, it's like setting the intention of, well, I'm ready now to change this. So as soon as I get curious about this, I'm bringing this into my consciousness, and now the universe will have to meet it with something that's ready to shift it. And it's so, I love what you're sharing, because I think it's our responsibility to talk about this and to invite others to, again, bring this into their daily practice, you know, in between. You know, don't forget to lighten up and be in joy. Like, it's still, you know, it's like we got to do all of this, but this is a piece, is taking responsibility.
Well,
so thank you for sharing that.
I look at it like a scavenger hunt. And, you know, if I put the term detective on there, it's because I watch the detective movies, but really it's like a scavenger hunt, and every day is a scavenger hunt. And I like the discovery and adventure. Those are like one of my core values. So I would look to create your practices around your values and around things that excite you. So for me, adventure and discovery, I'm in. And scavenger hunt, for sure. And if I'm doing a scavenger hunt around things that have to apply to me and my well-being, I'm totally in. So if you're similar to me and you're a type A person, like, that would be a helpful practice for you.
Yeah, I love that, because the way you're terming it too is like, it's really beautiful for like the inner child to get excited about it, because the work can be a bit heavy, and we have to remember, you know, we came here to be light, and we can, you know, everything is perspective. So when we can make a game out of it, why not? Because that's, we are game changers. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing. We're looking at this game and going, oh yeah, I'm about to change this game and watch this happen. Because that's how.
And how exciting is that?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we're doing. We're bringing in a new game, a much higher, pure game. So are there any, it's like the time just flies. Oh, it's 2:22. Are there any last pieces of wisdom or insight that you would like to share, along with how people can connect with you and get in touch with you if they'd like to work with you?
I think yes, I have a few things I'd like to say, is that I think you bring up a good point about having fun and making it fun. And I think if you're connecting your core values, it becomes more interesting to do what it is that you need to do. I personally love to learn. And so I make everything about, well, what did I learn? And so at the end of your day, I would suggest that people look at, well, what did I do that was successful today? And just jot those down, because I think too often we're spending time on the things that we need to get done and our checklists of things that need to do tomorrow. And if we ended our day with what are my successes from the day, I think that would go a long way for lifting your spirits before you go to bed. So what are your successes of the day? Just a simple tool. But how to reach me, obviously I do one-on-one sessions and I'm available for those. But I think the easiest and cheapest option, and I want to give a cheaper option for people because I think it's important, is my monthly energy recalibration. And that is something where you will have an opportunity to work with me from a distance on a monthly basis to clear density and also get channeled wisdom that is specific to the group themes that are coming up. So for example, last month, we really neutralized that field that I was mentioning, so we weren't as triggered. And I think that's the easiest way to participate with me if you're unsure about doing a one-on-one, because it's only $100 and it's once a month. And it's 12 sessions for an entire year, which I think most people are like, why is it so cheap? And it's so cheap because I want it to be, I think this is how we raise in unity consciousness. I don't think that unity consciousness has to be expensive, but it's really hard to access when you have a lot of density. So clearing the density on a regular basis is extremely important. The other is one-on-one sessions with me, which I love to do. And I have been doing classes about once a quarter. So I offer those periodically to my clients. And I'm doing those classes. I'll probably start another one in October.
Amazing. Yeah, and I highly suggest, anyone listening that feels guided to connect with Kiannaa, to reach out to her. You can comment if you're watching this live. And I will be posting her website and her information at the top of this. And any platform that you end up watching this, her information will be attached to this transmission today. So thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that we brought in some awareness and some beautiful invitations for people to kind of, co-create and be empowered in their shifts and their daily shifts and what's going on. And as much as we've talked about empowerment, at the same time, it's like we're here to also support each other, to support each other's empowerment. And I think that's what's key. And I know, so allow yourself to receive the support so you can remember how empowered you can be through this journey, and reach out to one of us, if needed. And gosh, Kiannaa, thank you so much. Thank you. And we'll stay connected after this, but thank you everyone that's been watching. And if there's any questions you have, just tag one of us so we can answer and connect with you.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for joining and watching, and have an amazing rest of your week and weekend.